Picture this. You book an insane space trip just to escape Earth and head to another planet that's 120 years away. So, you'll be spending all that time snoozing away. Something goes wrong, and you wake up way too early, finding yourself all alone on the spaceship. What do you think you'd go for? Well, it starts in space, on the spaceship Avalon, making its way to a new planet named Homestead. This ship has a crew of astronauts and 5,000 passengers, all in hibernation. They're tucked away in pods that pause their vital functions, and they'll wake up 120 years later when they reach the new planet. The spaceship flies through a bunch of asteroids, leading to a few malfunctions. But it can automatically fix all its problems, so everything's sorted out except for one glitch in the hibernation pod of a guy named James. When James's hibernation ends, the pod opens up. He wakes up to a recorded message and thinks he's made it to Homestead. He gets up, heads to his room, and gets ready to meet the other passengers, but he's surprised to see no one else around. He begins wandering around the ship, looking for anything that might help him figure out what happened. He finds out the ship is huge, almost like a bustling city on the move, packed with advanced tech. He eventually finds a guidance system and asks it where the ship's officials are. When he gets to the ship's command area, he sees it's empty. That's when he finds out where the captain and crew quarters are and goes there to get some answers. The door's locked, so he can't get in for his class. He's surprised to find out the ship is on autopilot and there's no crew around. So, he decides to use the ship's tech to ask about their journey. He finds out there are still 90 years and a few weeks to go before they reach Homestead, and they left Earth about 30 years back. That's when he figures out he got up way too early. He's trying to send a message to the company that operates the voyage, which is located on Earth. He mentions in the message that his hibernation pod had a malfunction, and he ended up waking up way too early. So, when he sends the message, he finds out it'll take 19 years to get there, and the reply? That'll show up in 55 years. He begins to stroll around the ship again, and soon spots a bartender at the bar. He's taken aback to spot someone else, so he walks over to him. Turns out, it's just a robot called Arthur. That's when he gives up on finding anyone else, and the robot is all he has left as a companion. The next day, he heads to breakfast but discovers that his class is limited to a specific meal, meaning he has to eat the same thing every day. He chooses to keep going. Since he's a mechanical engineer, he works on fixing his hibernation pod, but it just doesn't work, and he ends up getting trapped inside it until he finally manages to escape. He tries to open the pilot's and crew quarters, but nothing works. Days go by like this, one after another, with just the robot Arthur to chat with. He begins to share his troubles with him. Arthur tells him to make the most of life if he can't change it. So, James takes his own advice and sneaks into a first-class passenger room to stay in, rather than sticking with his basic cabin. He begins exploring all the fun activities on the ship to have a good time. He plays basketball, dances, and grabs a bite at the ship's restaurants. His depression makes him neglect his appearance and the cleanliness of his surroundings. He just stops caring about anything since he's living by himself. A whole year goes by, and he just keeps drinking since he's lost all hope in life. One day, he discovers a space suit that lets him step outside and truly experience space. He's secured with a rope for safety. He hurries to give it a go and loves the stunning view of space. But then, he chooses to take his own life. He's just about to open the door without the suit on. Right at the last moment, he pulls away and starts crying. Right then, he spots a hibernation pod with a woman named Aurora inside. He's immediately interested in her and quickly looks through the passenger files to find out more. He checks out her video where she talks about why she joined the journey. Turns out, she's a writer and journalist looking for a unique adventure to spice up her writing. James is always right there next to her, watching her videos like he's actually living with her. Eventually, he thinks about living with her, and the thought of waking her up from hibernation begins to take shape in his mind. But he holds back, aware that it would mess up her life. He doesn't have anyone else to chat with besides Arthur, so he vents his stress to him. But it doesn't really help, and he tells Arthur that he's just a machine and can't get what he's going through, saying he needs a real human being. He's still unsure about waking her up. He tries to shake off the thought by distracting himself with anything else. He calls ChatGPT, but in the end, he just can't help himself and decides to wake her up from hibernation. He opens her pod and then quietly slips away before she notices him. Aurora wakes up and notices she's alone on the ship, which puzzles her until she bumps into James. He explains to her that there was a malfunction in his pod and shows her that they still have 89 years to go until they arrive. They got up way too early. She mentions they need to find a solution, but he shows her all the things he already tried and how none of it worked. When she learns he's been awake for an entire year, she begins to freak out. He reassures her and explains that going back into hibernation needs some special gear, just like what they had before leaving Earth. She's not completely convinced there's no way to fix it, but for now, she chooses to get some rest. James, meanwhile, is sitting with the robot Arthur, feeling bad for waking her up. He tells Arthur to keep it under wraps that James was the one who woke her, and to hold off on telling Aurora until he's ready to come clean. The next morning at breakfast, Aurora is shocked by the food he's been eating for an entire year. Since she's from the gold-class passengers, she gets him some nicer food. She begins to suggest various solutions to their problem, but he responds that he's already tried everything she brought up, and none of it worked. She keeps at it, repeating all the steps he once tried without giving up. In the end, she chooses to go ahead and write the book she had intended to create about Homestead. Instead of sharing her new life there, she talks about what she's been through. She begins to establish a daily routine and ultimately chooses to write about James' experience throughout the journey and the reasons he joined the voyage in the first place. He shares with her that he's a mechanical engineer looking to kickstart a fresh life in a new world, one he can shape on his own terms. After that, they start getting closer and chatting more often. He discovers that she had booked a round-trip ticket. She planned to stick around in Homestead for a year, then head back to Earth to share her journey, making her the only journalist with that kind of experience. That's when she recalls the dream that's now broken. James takes her out to explore the fun activities he used to do, hoping to distract her from her sadness. As time goes by, they get even closer. He decides to recreate a famous building from her hometown because he knows she misses it. Later, he asks her out, and she says yes right away. She shares with him that her dad was a well-known writer as well, but he passed away when she was just a kid. James says he wants to learn all about her life. So, he takes her to try on the spacesuit and head outside the ship. She's blown away by the view and the whole experience, and they both share their feelings for one another. They begin living together and having a great time, while she keeps working on her book. He surprises her with real flowers, one kept on the ship to be planted later on Homestead. She's so happy because she loves real plants. Everything's going smoothly until her birthday, when James surprises her with an engagement ring. Arthur sees them together and says they look perfect for each other. Aurora says there are no secrets left between them now. They've merged into one. That's when Arthur accidentally lets it slip that James is the one who woke her up, and he shares how tough that decision was for James. She can't believe it and calls James out. When he doesn't deny it, she falls apart, feeling like he's ended her life. Whenever he tries to chat with her, she dodges him, and then she finally loses it and starts hitting him to vent her frustration. He talks to her over the ship's intercom, explaining why he did it, how much he was suffering, and that he was about to end his life when he saw her. So, she kind of saved him, but she really doesn't care. She tells him to keep his distance, saying he messed up her life. So, after that, James starts to notice some little glitches in the ship's systems from time to time. So, it turns out the number of malfunctions is on the rise, but it seems like no one is paying attention. At the same time, Aurora begins to remember her moments with the people she lost. Meanwhile, James is doing his best to make it up to her in his own way. Since she loves real plants so much, he decides to plant a real tree right in the middle of the ship. Then, out of nowhere, the ship's system malfunctions. Some tasks just stop working, and the elevator even breaks down. That's when they hear the ship's captain asking who put a tree on his ship. They meet up with him and go over everything. James has been awake for 2 years, and Aurora for 1. He's shocked that the hibernation pods didn't work right. Since he's the captain, he can get into restricted areas on the ship. He's looking into the ship's issues, but there's no solid info available. He says he'll check out the hibernation pods. James sees that the captain doesn't look so good. The captain comforts him, saying it's just the side effects of coming out of hibernation. He's surprised by the number of problems the ship has, and after checking the pods, he finds out that his own pod failed because of some odd malfunctions. So, about Aurora's pod, he figures out that it was James who woke her up. He feels weak again, so he decides to take a break and pick up the investigation of the ship's issues tomorrow. That night, another glitch occurs. The ship floats for a moment before it steadies itself again. James and Aurora quickly wake up the captain to share what happened. He sees that the issue came from bumping into big objects, which isn't a great sign. He looks into it more and discovers that the first impact was 2 years back, and they've been on the rise ever since. He finds out that the main system took a big hit from an overload, so they need to track down the source and get it fixed. They see that the systems likely to fail next are the ones keeping them alive, which means they're in serious danger now. The captain leads them to the control room, but then he collapses. They bring him to the medical robot, which shows he has just a few hours left because of multiple organ failure from all the pod malfunctions. The biggest surprise? Unfortunately, there's no treatment available that can help him. He's not going to make it. He just leaves them and sits by himself for a bit. Out of nowhere, another malfunction strikes the ship. They search for the captain and spot him in his suit. He says he can feel death approaching. He tells them to look out for one another, hands James his ID for accessing restricted systems to sort out the problems, and then passes away. That's when the ship's systems begin to spiral out of control. James goes to the maintenance room and asks Aurora for a hand. They find out that the malfunctions are getting worse and nothing seems to be working properly. Arthur the robot starts acting weird and smashing stuff until James finally shuts him down. So, they head over to the main maintenance bay to check things out and figure out what's causing the issue. They find out the power generator is out of order. They're giving it a go, but it's stuck. So, James forces it open, and all of a sudden, air starts getting sucked out because of an open hatch. James hangs on and gets the hatch closed, but he notices there are several breaches in the ship from the meteors. They keep looking until they find out the meteors messed up the reactor control computer, making it overheat dangerously. James begins fixing the first issue, the control room, which got hit by the meteor strikes too. He's trying to cool the reactor, but it only works if he manually overrides it. He gives it a try, but the outer door just won't budge. They have to open it manually to vent the heat and cool the reactor. He has to open it himself. That's the only way. Aurora's scared, but he tells her it's the only option. Otherwise, the ship and all 5,000 passengers will be doomed. He gets Aurora to open the reactor door while he takes care of the external one. Aurora opens it just as James opens the outer door. The heat vents kick in, the reactor cools off, and they manage to save the ship. So, James gets tossed out into space, and to make things worse, the tether linking him to the ship snaps. Aurora gets ready in a hurry and dashes out to rescue him. She gets him back on the ship, but it's too late. He's out cold. She rushes him to the medical robot, but it says he's dead. She pleads with it to bring him back, but it won't budge since she lacks the right passenger tier. Then she thinks of the captain's ID. She's using it. The robot brings James back to life, and he finally opens his eyes. They've managed to save the ship from all the huge damage it had. Then, they begin fixing all the things that got damaged. They honor the captain's last wish by sending his body into space in his suit. Later, James shares with Aurora that he found something while working on the ship. He discovered a hibernation feature in the medical robot. It can halt all biological activity in the body, allowing someone to enter hibernation again. But before she gets too excited, he shares the problem with her. Since there's just one robot, only one person can use it. James thinks she should go back into hibernation to wake up on Homestead and live her dream. Aurora tells him that would just mean he'd be alone, and when she wakes up, he won't be there. So, James decides to propose instead. He hands her the ring once everything on the ship is sorted out. She chooses to stay and live her life with him rather than going back to hibernation. After 88 years, the ship has finally made it to Homestead. The crew wakes up and is totally shocked to see natural plants everywhere on the ship. James transformed it into a huge garden. Aurora left them a recorded message along with her book, explaining everything that went down. She shares that rather than clinging to a dream of a distant place, they decided to transform their own space into a dream and created a joyful life together.